here again with a new kind of video series that I'm hoping to do here on the channel. As many of you know, if you've been following me for a while, I love fantasy books and sci-fi books for sure, but I also love film. I own and operate a movie theater in Rochester, Minnesota, and I just really enjoy film and the history of film. And also something you know if you've been following me for a while is that I consider myself a postmodern, both in my outlook on life as well as my critiquing lens. So for this new series that I'm calling 3 Movies You Should See, and then I'm going to use some sort of category, I thought in the first one I'll do 3 movies you should watch that are postmodern in theme, because I get from a lot of discussions I've had with people in real life, also on this channel and in my Discord, that people are very interested in the postmodern, what it means. And generally, people teaching postmodernism, for the most part, there are exceptions, are people who are not postmodern themselves and are often critiquing postmodernism. So I know that recommending books is always a good way to go, but I also know that a lot of people who want to read Lord of the Rings or Malazan or those other books aren't necessarily going to want to read Fear and Trembling by Soren Kierkegaard or the Postmodern explained by Jean-Francois Lyotard. Right? Probably I can't get many of you to read those, although I do think they're good. But what I can maybe talk you into doing is watching a movie. So I thought 3 postmodern movies that you should see. So all of these are actually pretty old. I didn't do this on purpose, but there was kind of a golden era of postmodern films coming out, and a lot of them are European based. So all 3 of these are foreign films. They are subtitled, but I really think they're worth it. And so I would love to have you guys, especially if you haven't watched foreign film before, check out some of these movies. So first, I'm gonna just go in chronological order. First one I'm going to talk about here is a Swedish film by the name of The Seventh Seal. And this is by famed director Ingmar Bergman. It is a very fascinating story and even a little fantasy based, so I'm not going too far off base here. The basic idea is a knight is coming back to his kingdom, to his lands, after coming home from the Crusades in the Middle Ages, and he comes home to find that his lands are infected with the Black Plague. Yes, this is not a really upper movie at all, but he basically challenges death, the personification of death, to a chess match, and is by doing that trying to delay his own death long enough that he does something meaningful or redemptive for his people that are dying and suffering under the Black Plague. So you can see there already, if you know anything about postmodernism, a lot of very interesting elements there. One is the somewhat meaninglessness of life. That sounds a little darker than I meant it.
Slutar du aldrig att fråga? Nej. Jag slutar aldrig.
The search for meaning and the search to put particular import on certain events over others. And part of the whole idea also deals with the existence of God and if he is indeed real, and what would that do for this knight in his particular situation and mankind as a whole. So it's a very heady film. It's very slow moving. It's very thought-provoking and philosophical. I hope I didn't just lose everyone there, but I really think that it is really, really worth your time to see. It's one of those movies that you are going to watch and not forget, and is really, really going to make you think. And especially around, in my view, a very important thing of, if what you have always been taught is not necessarily all the way true, how do you think and understand the world? And I think that's really important. So The Seventh Seal, released in 1957. That's in Swedish, but there is obviously subtitles. You should watch it. Second film, we are now going to France. Both of these next 2 films are French films. Breathless, directed by Jean-Luc Godard in 1960. Now this is even more so postmodern, not just in theme, but even in its structure. So I would also call this sort of a post-structuralist film. It's a very simple story about a sort of low-time thug in France who steals a car and then panics and kills a police officer. The rest of the film is about him trying to figure out how to get away with this kind of accidental murder that he has created. And a lot of that revolves around him with his girlfriend, who I actually forget the name of the character in the movie itself, but played by Jean Seberg, who has a phenomenal, interesting life on her own, the actress in real life, dogged by the CIA and a whole bunch of other very, very fascinating, crazy things. If you ever want to read an interesting Wikipedia article, go to Jean Seberg, the actress's page. But anyway, in the movie itself, a lot of the movie is them just talking, hanging out in the apartment, talking about life. And then it follows her for a little while and her thoughts on life. And what I say postmodern in theme is normally in this sort of movie, when I'm describing the plot to you, you'd think a lot would go into the crime scene, a lot would go into sort of the build up to this murder, and then the murder itself, and then the action that follows, as he's trying to figure this out. But that's not what this movie is about at all. It's about sort of the mundaneness of all of this, and that there isn't really a central plot and drive to this unless it's imposed by the movie. Some very interesting things happen. If you watch the movie, even just the first half hour, the murder scene with the police officer is very unclear. It's given to us from weird perspectives and shots. We never actually see the murder itself. Not that there's any doubt that this guy committed it, but it's just not dealt with in a very important way. We are not told as the audience that this is the most important thing to think of. In fact, much more time, as I said, is spent in a middle scene that is about 40 minutes long in my recollection, where they're just in this guy's apartment. They make love, and then they just talk to each other about stuff all over the place. Not important things about evading the cops or whatever, just like what they thought about a play they saw, or I forget the specifics, but it's a fascinating movie that draws you in and again plays with the themes and the expectations that we have for our stories, and then because we have them in our stories, what we expect for our own life. And so I really think Breathless, it's a masterpiece. It's not one of my favorite movies of all time. Actually, none of these three are, but I think they're all worthwhile to see and very, very thoughtful. The final film is a 1967 film by Jean-Pierre Melville. Again, this is another French film called Les Samouraïs, which is obviously French for the samurai or the warrior, if you're kind of double translating there. And this is another sort of post-structural kind of messing with themes and regular tropes in movies. Because it is a crime thriller, but it's sort of a neo-noir crime thriller where, again, there's a hitman, and we go through his day as it leads up to the hit that he takes, or that he performs, and then how he tries to get away with it. And there's a hitch in the plan that causes it to be more complicated. But again, just like in Breathless, the actual act of the hit itself is not focused on. We don't know the specifics of why or who, or really that it's focused on at all. It's more the rhythm of life that this guy lives. Again, a lot of time spent like in his apartment, like eating dinner, doing the dishes, making his bed. Literally, these things are done. And on top of all of that, I have to say, one of the coolest things about this is just that, how cool it is. I mean, this guy, this hitman is just the essence of cool, suave, sort of Humphrey Bogart-esque hitman. But the question is that worth anything as you watch this movie? Because it's not glorified, it's not romanticized. You see everything. Because as I said, as cool as he is, also we see him do dishes. We see him cook a meal. We see him go for a walk because he's bored. Like, there's a distinct desire not to prime the audience for what they should understand, what they should think about it, merely giving the series of how things happen and let them judge for themselves. Again, this question of reality versus the reality we're presented and the interplay there. So these three films I think are really interesting, really great films, and I think that you guys would really enjoy them if you saw them. Very thought-provoking, and unlike a book that could take 20 hours, 10 hours, 15 hours, whatever, even if you're just listening to an audiobook, these are all, 2-hour things to be very thought-provoking. Final thing before I go, I think this would be fun. We do a lot of tags on BookTube, and they're often about questions. I'm curious if this will work as a tag where I'm gonna tag some people to challenge you to watch one of these movies. They're all available to stream somewhere, or you definitely probably can get them from your local library. So I think this is fair game. We'll see how it goes. But I'm gonna tag 3 of my friends and see if they watch them. First, I'm gonna tag Alan from the Library of Alexandria, because Alan probably is not gonna love any of these. Postmodernism is not his thing. So I kind of wanna hear him rage about it. But at the same time, for all of like the front Alan puts on about like, you know, his rage, he's a very thoughtful guy. And so I think he will appreciate some of the themes in these films. 2, I'm gonna challenge Chris at Chris Bookish Cauldron, one of my best friends on YouTube, because he doesn't watch many movies at all. So I'm gonna force him to watch a movie by tagging him in this. And 3rd, I'm gonna tag Evie over at, she just changed the name of her channel. I think it's Evie Reads, but it could be, she was only Evie. I can't remember what it is now, but look in the description below. I'll tag her. But tag those 3 friends, and you guys can be free to tag. Or I don't know if you, I would say just like make a video talking about your thoughts on whatever movie you watched. Maybe you want to say 3 movies and tag somebody else. Who knows? Am I starting something new? I don't know. Or it could not work at all. Anyway, thank you guys for checking it out. Happy watching, and first in, last out.